Alright, so coming in, this is on to a guide now for Phase 4. We'll be doing just the first mechanic. We're not going to worry about probably doing the crystallized mechanic. I'll probably do 2 videos for that again because it's just a lot of information and it'd be easy to break it up rather than have 2 longer videos so that I can go a little bit onto detail and stuff. So starting off at the very end of Phase 3, you will obviously have to get the boss be like 20% as was previously stated. But then wherever you kill the boss actually matters, because wherever the boss dies is going to determine where the Usurper of Frost is going to spawn going into the next phase. So if she's on the south half of the map, she spawns on the north half of the map. If she's on the north half of the map, she spawns on the south half of the map. And this can kind of just matter for getting that early GCD. Something else you can also do if you don't know is you can use your audio, because she'll start to make a quote while she's invisible before she actually spawns, and it's directional. So you can actually tell where she's going to spawn early also by that if you don't use the half of the map system. So here she will spawn over on the north half of the map, which will be right next to the crystal memory. So we start off by stacking on this marker right here, like on her side hitbox. And we do this because when she opens up, she will transform into her Hraesvelgr counterpart, which will place an Ak Rai under your position. And then she'll stay in this version of herself for the remainder of the mechanics. So this is the only time you gotta bait it's the only time you have to bait the mechanic, the Ak Rais. So we all stack up here tight together. She'll have the quote, "Come to me, Hraesvelgr," and we will want to bait here because it's just universal depending on either side of the map, because you can see since she's on the north side of the map, the Fragment of Fate, which cannot die in this phase, is right behind her, and you do not want to kill this. So you have to basically spend this entire mechanic not ever doing damage to this thing, because if it takes even a single instance of unnatural damage from like a stack marker or anything, it will die, because it barely survives with like 1% HP by the very end of the phase. So if it takes even a fragment of damage, it just dies. So we will stack up here for the Ak Rais. As soon as the Ak Rais are snapshotted, which is when she transforms and you see a bunch of feathers go pop out of her right here when her wings come out and she pops the feathers, that's when you'll want to dodge, and we'll dodge middle. We'll want to send 2 minutes instantly here because this is when 2-minute window is, and we drift slightly, ever so slightly, because it doesn't matter if you drift here since you're holding your next 2s into the final phase. And then you can start all your cleave. So to start this mechanic off, Dragonsong, we have DPS stack south and support stack north. If you've ever done E8S, you'll have a huge advantage here. E8S bowtie for light rampant, because this mimics the very same bowtie mechanic from there. So we'll stack the parties. DPS south, supports north. We'll go with tanks going from the top left corner, so northwest, to healers in the northeast. And the same down here, we'll do melees in the southwest corner to ranges on the southeast. And depending on like overlaps will determine like who like flexes for who and all that. Right off the bat, you want to try to like look for a bow tie as soon as this mechanic comes out. So you can see right here we got a bow tie instantly. It's like very hard to see, but you can see we got a bow tie. And this bow tie means we already have the correct pattern, so there's no flexing for the chain side of the map. But the one thing we do have to like check for also is to see if both the stack markers are on the same side of the map, because this can happen where both stack markers are on the same side of the map. So we can see right here the stack marker is on Finn, and the other stack marker is on, it looks like, Despy up there. And because of this, we already have a natural resolution. There's nobody that needs to actually flex here for the end of the mechanic. So now that we have the bow tie players will stand inside the towers, because they will be taking an instance of light damage from the towers, and the non-tethered players will want to bait Proteans from Oracle Light, which is in the middle of the map, so that they also give an instance of light. So everyone's at 3 stacks. This will put everyone at 4 stacks. Therefore, the mechanic will resolve properly. So we just all stack in here very close on the towers. You can see over on the east and west, the DPS not the DPS, but the 4 Unchained players are moving in close to Oracle Darkness, because once again, it's 4 baited Proteans, closest players. So we'll want to stand slightly in the tower and then cheating outwards. And then these 4 players will want to bait their Proteans. The best way I will recommend to like bait your Proteans is you aim them in between the ordinals, because aiming them in between the ordinals will make it so it's very much more consistent. And if you're a tower player, you want to be basically north and south perfectly, as you'll give a little bit of extra room, because you can see right here these Proteans are pretty thick and you want to give a little bit more leniency. Like here, obviously we have a fuck ton of safe room, but sometimes they can be a lot closer to the party, and chains can play it safe by being directly north and south. As soon as the tower is resolved and the Proteans go out, you will want to start fanning out to bait a Spirit Taker. As you can see, is already being casted. And the way we do our Spirit Taker is we will fan out in between the ordinals again, but we will shift like everyone slightly south because what's going on the north side of the map is that fragment of fate is up there, and if she hits it with the Spirit Taker, she will destroy it. So we'll fan out slightly cheating south so that we don't accidentally hit the crystal and then wipe the mechanic. So that's pretty much why we have a lot of stuff shifted south, is always for that. Same thing goes here, because you're gonna have a tank. We're gonna have a water stack. You're gonna see the water stack is cheating slightly south. Right here, they're about lined up with the 1 marker. I'll get a better angle of this in a little bit, but they'll also be cheating slightly south, as they do not want to hit that crystal. Pretty much, if you're on the support side of the map, all your mechanics are resolved cheating slightly south, and if you're on the south side of the map, you also cheat slightly south, as you want to help the chains not break. As soon as the watermark goes off, a somber dance is already being casted by Oracle Darkness, as seen on the target list. So this will bait to the furthest player and then the closest player. So as soon as this water goes off, our tank that is unchained, because 1 tank will be chained, 1 tank will be unchained. Our tank that is unchained will want to bait the far bait, and then our tank that is chained will want to bait the close bait. So you'll see Tsubaki will take off to the wall, bait the far bait, and we'll get this near the wall. And then Tsubaki will swing wide around the boss. Do not go through the hitbox. Go wide around the boss, safety game. And then the tank that was chained will want to directly into the middle of the hitbox, as they will want to take the nearest bait. And then bait it, obviously, back to where like Tsubaki was, so that they don't accidentally hit the party with the dance. And that's literally all Darklit Somber Dance, or Darklit Dragonsong. Then you will want to break into light parties after the mechanic. And you want to go for a Hand of Pain here. So our goal, I think this is a 5% difference is Enrage, I think, or is the Hand of Pain check here. I think it's 5%. But I don't fucking know. We honestly just keep tabbing every single GCD. So you'll see like players spamming tab here a lot. But we're constantly calling out whatever boss is higher if it starts to shift by more than 2%. I think it's a 5% check. It could be a 3% check. But but we don't even ever really risk it. The only time we've ever seen the tether pop up is when we've had like really bad shifts. So I can't actually vouch for what this difference is. We just keep this boss within range, just keep tabbing. And since there's so much natural cleave, they honestly stay a lot better. It's a lot easier than like DSR, for example, because DSR there's no natural cleave from GCDs. Like if you hit a wing motif on a Nidhogg, you're not gonna cleave haste race Spellguard. So here, if you hit a wing motif on Gaia, it will naturally cleave both of them. So it just works out in the long run. But for here, we'll stack north and south, and this will target the #1 amenity for each boss. We had our tanks start voking here, would voke their respective bosses. So for here, you would see that Rain is holding Gaia, and then Tsubaki's holding Reen. And we do this, they will voke right before this mechanic, just because in case of any aggro shifts. Like, for example, maybe one of the tanks wasn't able to hit their boss and they might have ripped. So our tanks will always voke here to make sure they have their respective boss for this mechanic. Because something will be seen is these put defensive buffs on each party member, and if these debuffs make it so that if you get hit by the opposite color, you will take an immense amount of damage and wipe the raid. And will kill yourself pretty much. So always voke your boss as a tank to try to hold aggro better here. After you get hit by this 4 times, you will stack mid. And this is the Hand of Pain check. This right here is when the Hand of Pain happens, the Mornafa. The Akmorns are the before the Mornafas. They are not the Hand of Pain check. This is the Hand of Pain check. So this is when you want to make sure they're balanced. So you can see Frost is like about 3-ish% higher, but we just start hitting her. So we never really ever see Hand of Pain. We have never wiped a Hand of Pain because of such. A big thing when progging is the Hand of Pain does go through invuln, but it targets the main tank of the Usurper or Frost. So whoever has aggro the highest on her can actually leave the party if you're going to fail the Hand of Pain. So in this case, if Tsubaki noticed that we are not succeeding this Hand of Pain check, he was already ready to run out of the party and suicide themselves. This does not cause an enrage or anything. This will save the run. So if you know you are going to fail this check, run out of the stack and just run out of the party and just stack, go to the wall and sack it. Then a healer can get you back up for the next mechanic. You can do this at both Hand of Pain checks. There's one before Crystallize and one after Crystallize. So you can just use this to benefit yourself very, very, very heavily. But yeah, after that, that's it. That's it for Darklit Dragonsong. Then it goes into Crystallize Time, which has a lot more nuance to it, and I will go over that in the next guide. But first, I will get another perspective of like the different angles for Dragonsong really quick. All right, so going into this part, we're going back to the beginning of Darklit Dragonsong. We can already kind of see who the flexes are, like what the two stacks are going on. So you can see right off the bat, the two stacks are on support, so there's potentially going to be a flex. It depends what happens with the chains. So once again, we go in our positions, MMRR, and then TTHH up on this top side, and we try to identify the chain. Our way of like doing this, because this is guaranteed a pattern that we have to flex for, you can see an hourglass right away. You can see an hourglass right away, so that we know that with an hourglass, the way to make it a bow tie is you have the top left and the bottom right have to flex. So here, a tank never really has to think too early of the pattern. They only have to really think of that on a they have to flex later for the somber dance, or not the somber dance, but the spirit taker. So that's the only time they really have to think about this. So a tank can, as soon as they recognize it's not a bow tie, can just book it straight south and then resolve for their tether later. But before that, they will need to just go south, easy peasy, and DPS will just need to know which one's flexing. So when you see it's an hourglass, you will have the bottom right flex. When you see it's a box, you have the bottom left DPS flex. So in this pattern, we see it's an hourglass, so I would flex. Now if this is a box, we would have the other DPS chain flex, which would be Finn. But since it's an hourglass, I will flex. Another way to quickly identify if you are tethered, for example, is you will get a debuff, a chain debuff. So this is where I'm staring at on my toolbar, is I'm always staring right at this debuff section of my game. So if I see a chain pop up, I immediately know to like start looking at this pattern and try to figure out what this pattern is. If this pattern isn't like on my debuff, I really don't care about the pattern because I'm not shot calling it. For example, we had our one of our healers was calling this. Since they kind of don't do anything, healers just plant the entire time. They have no resolution here for this cryo system we set up. So they would just sit here and they just would call this out because they don't have to like actually do any in the movement if it's a bad pattern. So we just had our healer. And the way we would call this is hourglass. If we heard hourglass, it meant bottom right flex. And if we called box, we would mean bottom left flex. And then tank, like we had stated previously, just always has to like flex over. So going on here, I can see that there's an hourglass right away. I will flex straight north. I don't even try to like go to my take the spot. I just go straight to the tower. And then you can kind of see we've created the bow tie, and then we know which way we're flexing. So like if you were a tank, you can kind of stand in your tower and figure out what the bow tie is going to look like. If you're just like flexing without thinking, you just flex without thinking like actually what the pattern was. You just know it was a box or an hourglass, so you had to flex. So when you're down there, you can fan out like this and create like a very tight bow tie and be like, oh, I got to flex right, or I got to flex left. So it can be something like you can figure out quickly. But here, now you'll see I'm on the crystal side of the map, so this is where like stuff can be a little bit more sketchier. Because if I resolve my mechanic, if I get chosen for Spear Taker and it hits this, it can wipe the mechanic. Like obviously you're allowed to prog the rest of the phase, but you basically get the bad ending because the memories are dead. So yeah. But here we'll take this thing. As soon as this resolves, we flex into a Spirit Taker. You'll see I won't fan out backwards like I did over on the other side. Instead, I'll stay a little forward. Because if you're more inwards, and then these people will stretch their tether downwards, then you don't have to worry about the crystal. But you cannot back up on this pattern, because if you get Spirit Taker, you get hit. And you can see the Spirit Taker is not super large. So the way we did this is we would stand directly in between the two markers. So that we can kind of have like a loose spread where it's tight but not too bad. We did used to have a wider spread, and we used to ran into an issue one time where let's say like if Tsubaki got chosen here, if Tsubaki was all the way at the wall for safety gaming, she would jump all the way to the wall, and then if Green chose that side of the map as the safe zone, it made the tank baiting Somber Dance extremely hard, because now to be the furthest player, they have to go do some really janky movement to be the furthest player. So we want to make sure we don't fan out too far, because if you fan out too far all the way at the wall, you could curse or screw over the tanks if you do this. So here, going into this, we've seen the somber dance, or the spirit tick has been chosen. We look at Reen, we see that she's cleaving this half of the map, the Bravo half of the map. We then collapse and over, and once again, we have a water stack in the north half. And with this water stack in the north half, we need to make sure that it's cheating south so that we don't accidentally hit the crystal. Same thing will happen here. They will cheat a little bit more south as well. We're pretty much shifting the whole lines because we don't want to accidentally hit the crystal. And then the waters will resolve. Tanks will get ready to run out. Tanks run out really quickly. And then you have the close tank. Then we break into light parties again, and we start tapping for the Hand of Pain. But that's it for that pattern. Alright, this is like the last real pattern you have to really worry about as any kind of roll, is like a flex pattern with a stack marker. And to identify a flex pattern, like right here, I can immediately see that there's 2 stacks down here, so there's a potential flex on my half of the map. I don't really use this as a way to like think ahead. I kind of just go in the moment, and you'll see what I mean. Is we'll look for the chains, and I will immediately see on my debuff bar I do not have a chain. Therefore, I know I'm not the stack with the chain, because one stack is always on chain, the other stack is not. So here I know that I'm the stack without it, so there's a potential flex depending on how this resolves. So right here we know it's a bow tie. Since we know it's a bow tie, I know this person defaultly is not flexing. There's a chance if it was like an hourglass, they still wouldn't flex over. If it was not an hourglass, but a box. Like if it was a box, Finn would flex over. Astra wouldn't. So this stack would still stay south. But the way I identify this is when we're going over to Proteans, I look at this at a perspective where I'm looking from east to west. So I'm looking over at the west. I can see there's 2 stack markers on the south half of the map. So I'm going to flex over. So I'll move over and I'll show my intent, and then Birthday will move south so that she can bait this Protean. Because we basically right here, you want to try to keep the stack markers on opposite half of the maps. And my very quick tell is legitimately just lining up on the side and seeing that if there's 2 stack markers on the south half of the map. Right here, south half of the map, 2 stack markers, me flex. Easy peasy. So then going into here, we can bait close to Reen. We always aim our Proteans in between. We'll walk out. On this side, you need to be a little bit more cognizant of your support as they want to bait away from the crystal. So I'm like looking over at Despy. I'm trying to make sure I'm like equidistance from Birthday and Despy, so I don't accidentally clip them. So if he does get chosen, I don't get hit here. And then here, I will stay on the north half of the map. Collapse over on the north half, on the safe half of the wing that's not being hit. And then resolve the stack marker. Boom. Stay north. Or, well, light parties. And that's it. That's literally it.
I shall weave a new Dragonsong. I told you it would make a great necklace.
Sorry about that. It's my birthday.
Oh, it's beautiful. I think it'll really suit you. Me? But I thought you should have it. I shall weave a new Dragonsong.
Hourglass.
I told you it would make a great necklace.
Astro Flux. Go back.
Oh,
Just kidding. Just kidding.
beautiful. I think it'll really suit you. Me? But I thought you should have it.
Frost. AC, light parties. 3% frost.
Light and darkness, gather to me.
Tabbing. Darkness. Darkness. Middle. Darkness. Keep them balanced.
Pain shall be fleeting, joy everlasting. As I wish it, so shall the river of time flow.
15 drops.